Your sister deserves it more," Mom said. "I was the one funding them. Before I tell you my whole story, let me know in the comments what part of the world you're listening to me from. My name is Sarah Martinez. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a registered nurse at Cleveland General Hospital in Ohio. For the past 12 years, I've been working double shifts, including nights and weekends, not just to support myself, but to financially sustain my mother, Linda, who's 59, and my younger sister, Ashley, who's 26. Ever since my father walked out on us when I was 22, I stepped up to become the family's financial backbone. Every Friday, like clockwork, I sent $1,500 to my mom's checking account. That money represented countless hours of caring for critically ill patients, dealing with life and death situations, and sacrificing my own social life to pick up extra shifts. I did it with love, believing I was fulfilling my duty as the responsible older daughter. My mother always told me I was the strong one, the daughter she could always count on. Ashley had never held a job for more than 4 months. There was always an excuse: toxic workplace culture, discriminatory bosses, anxiety issues, or claims that the work environment was too stressful for her sensitive nature. Meanwhile, I'd come home after 12-hour shifts, my scrub still smelling like disinfectant, only to hear complaints about how lucky I was to have job security. Mom always defended Ashley, saying she needed more emotional support, that I was naturally more resilient. For years, I accepted this dynamic without question. I paid for their rent in a nice suburb, Mom's prescription medications, groceries, utilities, and still left extra money for Ashley's personal expenses. When she needed something special like online courses or a new laptop, I always found a way to help. I'd work overtime, give up my vacation days, anything to ensure my family was comfortable. But recently, something felt off. Ashley started showing up with designer handbags, expensive makeup, and even mentioned planning a trip to Miami. When I asked how she could afford these things, Mom quickly changed the subject, and Ashley mumbled something about gig work she was doing online. I wanted to believe it, but something in my gut told me there was more to the story. During my last visit to their house, I noticed the refrigerator was stocked with organic foods, imported wines, and gourmet cheeses that I couldn't afford for myself. When I questioned it, Mom said Ashley deserved to enjoy some luxuries after all her struggles. I swallowed hard, thinking about the years I'd eaten ramen noodles to send them more money. It felt like a shadow was growing over our family dynamic, something I couldn't quite name, but that became more obvious with each visit, each evasive conversation, each guilty look they exchanged when I arrived. I sensed that something was about to be revealed, something that would forever change the relationship I'd accepted as normal for so many years. For 12 years, I'd built my entire identity around being the provider, the responsible one, the daughter who could always be counted on. I worked extra shifts without complaining, gave up my own dreams to fund theirs, saved every penny to ensure my family had comfort. I remember canceling dates because I needed to work more to cover some family emergency, or how I postponed getting my nurse practitioner degree because the tuition money was needed elsewhere. Throughout these years, Mom always praised me for being so dedicated, called me her pride and joy, told neighbors how blessed she was to have a daughter like me. Ashley would thank me profusely whenever I helped with something, give me emotional hugs and say I was the best sister in the world. These moments of recognition gave me strength to continue, made me feel my sacrifice was worthwhile. But as months passed, I began noticing subtle changes in their behavior. Mom seemed more nervous when I showed up unexpectedly, constantly checking her phone during our conversations. Ashley started leaving early when I came to visit, always with excuses about important appointments she could never explain properly. Our conversations became more superficial, filled with awkward pauses and evasive glances. One day, while waiting for Mom to return from the pharmacy, I found several credit card statements on the kitchen table. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the amounts caught my attention. They were enormous expenses at department stores, expensive restaurants, high-end beauty salons. How was my mother, who constantly complained about barely making ends meet, spending so much money? And more importantly, where was this money coming from? When I gently questioned her about the expenses, she became visibly uncomfortable, quickly explaining they were old bills and that Ashley was taking better care of herself now that she was working more. But something about the explanation didn't make sense. The charges were recent, all from the past 2 months, and Ashley still didn't have steady employment. At least that's what she kept telling me. I started paying closer attention to details during my visits. I noticed Ashley always had professionally done nails, salon-perfect hair highlights, clothes I recognized from expensive boutique windows where a single top cost more than I earned in 2 workdays. When I asked about these changes, she'd deflect, saying a friend had paid for it, or that she'd received it as a gift. The tension at home was palpable. I felt there were secrets being kept, conversations that stopped when I arrived, knowing glances between Mom and Ashley that I couldn't decipher. It was as if they were living a parallel life from which I was deliberately excluded, even though I was the one making that life financially possible. The worst part was the growing feeling that I was being deceived by people I trusted completely, people for whom I'd sacrificed so much, who knew every detail of my daily struggle, who understood how difficult it was for me to balance my own needs with family responsibilities. The idea that they might be betraying me somehow was almost unbearable, but the signs were becoming impossible to ignore. The night everything changed, I'd just finished a particularly difficult shift. We'd lost a young patient, someone Ashley's age, and I was emotionally drained. Needing comfort, I decided to make a surprise visit for dinner with my family. Arriving there, I found the front door slightly open and raised voices coming from the kitchen. I hesitated for a moment, but something made me stay and listen. It was Ashley complaining that the money Mom had given her wouldn't be enough for the trip she was planning to Cabo. Cabo. I'd never traveled internationally, never taken a vacation anywhere remotely luxurious, and there was my sister planning an international trip as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Mom was responding patiently, saying she'd figure something out, that I always sent enough money. That's when I heard the words that changed everything. "Sarah will never find out, honey. She sends the money thinking it's for household bills, but you deserve to have a good life too. Your sister has always been too rigid, too responsible. She doesn't understand that sometimes we need to treat ourselves. You're younger, more beautiful. You deserve to enjoy life." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. All the money I'd been sending religiously, every month, believing I was helping with basic expenses, was being used to finance a luxury lifestyle for Ashley. It wasn't just occasional extras. It was a systematic operation to divert my money, with Mom acting as intermediary and facilitator. I walked into the kitchen quietly. They were so involved in their conversation that they didn't see me coming. When they finally noticed my presence, the silence was deafening. Ashley went pale. Mom tried to cover with a forced smile, but it was too late. I'd heard everything, and the truth was written on their guilty faces. "How long has this been going on?" I asked with a calm that surprised me. My voice didn't shake. My posture remained upright. It was as if another version of me had taken control, one who wasn't willing to accept excuses or lies. For several long seconds, neither of them responded. It was in that moment of silence that everything crystallized in my mind. this wasn't just about money. It was about years of emotional manipulation, about being seen as a means to an end, about having my generosity and love systematically exploited. It was about discovering that the people I loved most in the world saw me as a useful fool, someone who worked hard so they could live comfortably at my expense. In that moment, I felt a clarity I'd never experienced before. It wasn't anger, at least not yet. It was something deeper and more powerful. Recognition that I'd allowed this to happen for years, and that now I had the power to choose how it would end. For the first time in decades, I was going to put my own interests first. In the days following that devastating discovery, I acted with calculated calm that surprised even myself. I didn't scream, didn't make dramatic scenes, didn't seek emotional confrontations. Instead, I began meticulously documenting everything I'd discovered. I saved photos of the credit card statements I'd accidentally photographed, noted dates, and amounts of all transfers I'd made over the past 2 years, researched prices of all the luxury items Ashley had recently acquired. Simultaneously, I began strategically reorganizing my financial life. I opened a new bank account at a different institution, redirected my direct deposit there, canceled old credit cards, and changed all my online account passwords. Each action was calculated, designed not as revenge, but as protection. I was building walls to protect what was rightfully mine. During this process, I maintained appearances with my family. I continued visiting normally, remained cordial and loving, but now I observed everything with different eyes. I saw how Ashley always steered conversations toward her needs when I was present, how Mom always found a way to mention some overdue bill or financial emergency. These were tactics they'd perfected over the years, and I'd been blind to them. 3 weeks after the discovery, I executed my plan. It was a Friday, the day I traditionally made the monthly transfer. Instead of sending money, I called Mom and said we needed to have a serious conversation. I scheduled it for Sunday morning, a time when I knew Ashley would also be home. I didn't give details about the subject, just said it was important. Sunday arrived sunny and warm. I arrived at their house punctually, at 10 in the morning, carrying a folder with all the documents I'd compiled. Mom was visibly nervous. Ashley was trying to appear casual, but I could sense the tension in the air. They knew something was different, but didn't imagine the extent of what I'd discovered. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd overheard the conversation that changed everything, and opened my folder. Without preamble, I began showing the evidence: bank statements, photos of luxury purchases, calculations of how much money had been diverted from its original purposes. I spoke with the same clinical objectivity I used at the hospital when reporting critical medical information. Over the past 18 months, I said, looking directly into both their eyes, approximately $18,000 that I sent for household expenses was used to finance a luxury lifestyle for Ashley. Travel, designer clothes, beauty treatments, expensive dinners, all paid for with money. I earned working night shifts, believing I was helping our family survive. The reactions were exactly what I expected. Ashley tried to minimize, saying they were just a few little things, and that she deserved some happiness in life. Mom tried to justify, explaining that I'd always been stronger, and that Ashley needed more emotional and financial support. But I was no longer interested in justifications. I was interested in consequences. With the same calm, I explained that from that moment on, monthly transfers were suspended indefinitely. Ashley would have to find a way to sustain her expensive lifestyle, and Mom would have to learn to live within her social security means. I offered to continue helping only with real medical emergencies, upon presentation of prescriptions and quotes. But the days of sending blank checks had ended. The reaction was explosive. Ashley started crying, saying I was being cruel and that she couldn't maintain the standard of living she'd grown accustomed to. Mom tried to appeal to guilt, reminding me of all the sacrifices she'd made when I was a child, questioning how I could abandon my family right now. But for the first time in my life, their emotional tactics didn't work on me. I'd built armor of self-preservation that was impenetrable. In the months that followed, I watched the natural consequences of their choices unfold. Ashley had to cancel her Cabo trip, sell some expensive clothes she'd bought, and finally get a full-time job at a retail store. Mom had to cut unnecessary expenses and learn to make a real budget. Both had to face the financial reality I'd been protecting them from experiencing for years. Initially, they tried various strategies to make me reconsider. Tearful phone calls, unexpected visits to the hospital where I worked, attempts to involve other relatives to pressure me. Ashley even faked a medical emergency, hoping my caregiver instinct would overcome my new determination. But I'd prepared for all these possibilities and maintained my position with gentle firmness. What was most interesting was observing how other people reacted when they learned about the situation. Some older relatives tried to convince me I was being too harsh and that family is family. But many of my work colleagues, especially other women who'd been through similar situations, supported me completely. They understood that setting boundaries wasn't cruelty. It was necessary self-preservation. Gradually, I began rebuilding my life around my own priorities. I used the money I'd previously sent to my family for things I'd postponed for years. I started my nurse practitioner program, renovated my apartment, took a trip to Europe I'd dreamed about since college. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself, not just existing to serve other people's needs. Over time, my relationship with my family found a new balance. Ashley eventually achieved financial stability on her own and developed genuine appreciation for the value of hard work. Mom learned to respect my boundaries and stopped trying to manipulate me emotionally. Our meetings became more authentic, based on real affection rather than financial obligation. The most transformative part was discovering who I really was when I wasn't constantly worried about saving other people. I discovered I had my own opinions, my own dreams, a personality that had been suffocated by years of self-sacrifice. I began making friendships based on mutual interests, not just convenience or need. I learned to say no without feeling guilty, to prioritize my well-being without feeling selfish. Today, 2 years after that revealing Sunday, I can say with certainty it was the best decision I ever made. Not just financially, but in terms of personal growth and self-respect. I learned that true love doesn't require self-annihilation, that healthy generosity has limits, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is force them to take responsibility for their own choices. To any woman reading this and recognizing herself in my story, I want you to know, you're not a machine for solving other people's problems. You're not obligated to sacrifice yourself infinitely for family members who don't value your efforts. Setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who values herself enough to demand respect. If you're supporting people who should be supporting themselves, if you're being emotionally exploited by manipulative family members, if you're living only to serve others' needs while neglecting your own, know that you have the power to change this dynamic. It might be painful, it might be scary, it might generate temporary conflicts, but in the end, you'll discover a version of yourself you never knew existed. Like this video, if this story touched you somehow, share it with other women who might need to hear this message. Comment and tell me your own experience with family boundaries. I read every comment, and you have no idea how your stories inspire other people. and subscribe for more stories of female empowerment and personal growth. Together, we can create a community where women support women to live their most authentic and fulfilling lives.